Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jodo Cast, your home for Star Wars gaming.
Content.
Period. That's the end of the sentence. Your home for Star Wars gaming. Joining me is Kurt Larson
Hello.
and Leo Andre.
Hi.
And we're all very excited because we've got nothing but super positive things to talk about this week. Let's start with, before we get to our topic, which will be Jedi Survivor. Besides Jedi Survivor, what has everybody been playing? Kurt.
I played watching Joe play Republic Heroes. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, Republic Heroes. The
Heroes of the Republic.
Clone
Republic.
Wars game, the Wii. I think it was just on Wii, and it must have Wii and PC. Was that the only platforms it was on? It must have been on a different console.
And that was kind of. It was fun for a few minutes. There'll be a video of that eventually. I think our energy was lagging by the end, but it was fun to try out. I don't think I've played anything else.
Speaking of energy, I was up too late last night finishing the story for Jedi Survivor because I was like, oh, I'm almost there. I might as well just... It's got to be like just this next bit. And then I kept saying that to myself over and over again, and I didn't go to bed until like 2:30 or something.
That sounds really nice. I wish I could do that.
Well, now I'm really tired, and then I was napping, and then I had to wake up to be here to record stuff for people.
Sorry.
Leo, what things have you been playing besides Survivor?
I won my a game of Legion the other day that I played. We're doing an escalation league at our store right now. I just got home from playing a game of Armada. I tried out my Super Star Destroyer for the first time. Since that's been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years now, I figured I should actually put it on the table and make the money I spent on that thing worth it.
And like Kurt said, I played some Star Wars, Clone Wars, Republic Heroes. Maybe that's what it was called. Mostly it was the game of, ooh, look at this funny hat we can make Anakin wear.
That was the highlight. The hats and the dances.
Jedi Survivor. And I did get in one match of Fortnite, which is doing a Star Wars thing right now, which I'll be doing some more of it because there's like force powers and lightsabers and stuff. It's always fun when they put lightsabers in there. Anyways, we don't care about any of that stuff. We're here to talk about Jedi Survivor, the second game in the Jedi subtitle
the
franchise.
Jedi series.
Yeah,
not
the Jedi
series.
Knight,
not Jedi Outcast,
just Jedi.
Not Jedi Academy, but the other Jedi games.
They should have just called it
just Jedi.
The Cal series. Which came out on Thursday night last week. So we've had less than a week to play it.
And you've already beaten it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've been really enjoying it, but my reason for plowing through the story as fast as I have is if you recall, Bethany and I made a gameplay series playing through Fallen Order. And like at least one person said they really liked it, and it like got, they watched it all during lockdown, and we're like, okay, well, we'll make the sequel series because at least one person really liked it, and we had fun making it. And
make sure put a dedication to that user at the beginning of each video.
Okay, I'll make it sound like they're dead. So this time around, Bethany now has an attachment to those characters and has read the tie-in novel and is excited for the game, but I can't make my first time playing the game, sitting there goofing around for a video. So I've got to play through it on my own time. Then we can play through it for the video. So I got to play through it myself first, which I've now beat the story. So now we can start the video. And so I'm not done with my first playthrough because I'm trying to 100% it. So I'll probably, I'll have like 2 simultaneous playthroughs happening, one on Bethany's account. But hopefully those videos start coming out soon. I don't know how long that'll take us, because I should check. I didn't. You know what? Let me fire up my Xbox on my other screen right here, and I'll see if I can find how many hours it took me to complete. Because while I did ignore a lot of the
Very
side
little
stuff,
exploring. Mostly
I
focused
did
on the
some
story.
exploring because now that I finished the story, was going back to all of the locations to try and get the map to say I 100% of that location. And to my surprise, most of the places I went to were already like 70 to 90% complete. I think maybe that's just because all the ones besides Kobo are very small.
And I'd be curious for the number, just to have that gut estimate, how big the game is, like on average.
Time played looks like 1 day and 8 hours. So 32 hours.
That's pretty
Which
decent
feels like
chunk,
a lot
actually.
for less than
Yeah.
a week since it came out.
Yeah, I just checked. I've got 10 and a half in so far.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've played for 32 hours, and Leo, you played for 10 hours, and Kurt, you played
And
for
half.
less than that?
I've played for, I think, like 3 hours. I would love to have played for 10 or 38 or whatever.
Let's start with the bantha in the room. I'm playing on Xbox Series S, which is sort of the baby version of the game as far as quality goes, but it's better than what Kurt and Leo are playing, because you guys are playing on PC, which means you're barely playing at all because it's a broken mess, right?
And I'm like basically at minimum system requirements anyways, though most people are saying that doesn't make a big difference. But it's been pretty bad for me, unfortunately. The very start was fine. The first couple hours on Coruscant ran great, which is, I don't know. The first Planet Kobo is just, I guess, that badly coded. But you would think, just like at a pure visual level, there's a lot of stuff in the background on Coruscant, all sorts of ships and buildings, and it's a very long draw distance, So I thought, this seems like it should be as taxing on the system. And Coruscant ran fine, other than one crash for me. But Coruscant ran fine. But Kobo, I can get nowhere. It always freezes. I can't get anywhere. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's frustrating because Kobo has performance issues on my game. I've had the game crash 3 times, and then on certain places on Kobo, like the textures just fail. There's never any frame rate issues though.
It sucks too because they put out the patch, and I was so excited to download that. I thought, oh, this is going to fix this at least enough that I can like get through. And I tried turning settings down to the absolute lowest, which looks really bad. And it sucks because when you turn the foliage way down, which should have helped, it didn't help. But when you turn the foliage down, there's also like invisible trees that you keep bumping into. That sucks. But then it also did not fix the problem for me. So I don't know. There's not much more to say about that other than I'm waiting until they do another patch. And if it takes like months or something, maybe I'll have to think about getting a better graphics card or something, which I mean, I'm kind of due for anyways, and see if that makes a difference. But I'm just kind of stuck for now, which is unfortunate because I was so excited to play more.
Sounds like, Leo, you've been able to push through the mess a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, that patch that came out did help my performance a fair bit. Just so if people are curious, I've got a Ryzen 5. I forget what the next number was after that, but it's a Ryzen 5 processor.
Infinity Ultra.
Yeah. I forget exactly which Ryzen 5 I had. And then I've got an RTX 2060 Super for my video card. So I'm kind of sitting essentially right in the middle of between the minimum and recommended specs. And like Kurt said, I mean, Coruscant for the most part ran fine for me. I was actually played Coruscant with ray tracing on. I played it at high settings. And except for a few places, I mean, it still looked ugly. Even a lot of stuff, it looked weird and ugly, even at high settings. Like some of the things where like people like they just look weird and fuzzy sometimes, like when they're moving. And it's not the motion blur thing; it's that.
It took me a while to like do I want motion blur on, off, film grain on, off? Because obviously there's very few visual settings on the Series S, like even less than on the Series X and the PS5. Because I'm like, why? Like, there's all these like fuzzy edges and like sort of like graphical artifacts sometimes on things. I'm like, is this just the motion blur? I don't think it is.
Yeah, no, that's not the motion blur. That's just how they made it look for some weird reason.
Yeah. I got used to it really fast, and then you stop noticing it.
But like I still had a few, I would have frame rate spikes now and then. But then, after I hit Kobo, things got really bad. Then after that, and eventually I got to a point where I just couldn't progress any further because the frame rates were. The game was performing so bad that I got to a fight against one of those not wampas,
Mogu.
Yeah, and I literally could not beat it because it was just performing so poorly that I couldn't hit any parry or dodge times and couldn't get past the fight.
Dang.
Then the patch came out and I still couldn't get past the fight, but
and
I
realized
could.
At that point, you were just bad at the game.
No. I would get him about 3/4. About every time I would get it about 3/4 dead, the frame rates would just all of a sudden just start tanking again for no reason, and then I'd miss all my parries, and he would just slam me into the ground and kill me.
You missed the little. He had a little remote in his left hand. When he started to lose, he pushed the button to like tank the frame rate. He's like, "Oh crap!"
But yeah, then I switched. Then I dropped down from Jedi Master down to I dropped difficulty down to Jedi Knight, and then I was able to beat it without even using any stims. So the change in difficulty is actually really funny because on Jedi Master, like if you miss one of its red attacks, one of its unblockable attacks, if you miss the dodge on that, and he grabs you, he just slams you down and takes away about 80% of your health. Versus like when you drop down to Jedi Knight, it starts a quick time event where you can not take any damage and cut his arms off instead. Which,
yeah, I played through the whole game on Jedi Knight. There's, I think, one extra difficulty option in this game because I remember a month or two ago, I watched Bethany play through it because we're like, well, let's catch up on the story and stuff. And so I was watching her play through it, and on the default, which was Jedi Knight or whatever, it was a little too hard for her. And then she dropped down to story difficulty, and she was like, "Well, this is way too easy. There should be like one in the middle."
Yeah,
and
they added
this
Padawan.
one. There is one in the middle, Padawan, which I had to use. If takes me an hour to beat one thing, I'm like, well, this is not worth my time. I'm not here to just smash my head against a wall. I want to. Like I don't mind. I like the challenge, but at some point it's like, well, I can't do it. So I had to turn it down for 2 boss fights near the end of the game, which really just spike in difficulty. What other thing about boss fights near the end of the game? I thought I was fighting the final boss like 5 times. I'm like, oh, cool, this is the final boss. I got him, and then it's like, oh, game's still going. Oh, Now, this one is the final boss. Oh, so never assume the game is over until you see the credits.
I hope each time too it was like a new Sith master of the previous person. Oh well, I'm that guy's master. Now I'm that guy's master.
It was me all along.
I hope you get to face Palpatine. That would be a great one-up over Vader from the first game. But
so I misspoke a little bit ago. The first time before the patch when I couldn't progress, it was actually the first time you fight one of those Triceratops kind of looking guys. Just, like a Triceratops with no horns.
The ones that kind of like side roll at you.
Yeah.
I think they're called Biomas because they
barf
at you.
Yeah, they barf those fucking they hawk up those weird spike ball guys.
I love the spike ball guys because if you like hold them, they look at you and they just kind of like sort of like a weird Pac-Man ball. I'm like, I don't want to kill this guy.
It is funny listening to you talk about this without having done it because you could be making all this up and like it's.
Picture a tumbleweed, but with like a ball of flesh inside with a mouth, and that's one of the enemies.
Sure,
it's a Langolier.
Yeah, it'll probably be in the title of this. We're not going to do any story spoilers. Any spoilers here are, going to be, I don't know, maybe
unimportant.
Like you get a gun, you get a blaster. Like if you think that's a spoiler.
Pre-patch, I couldn't get past that Biomob because frame rates would drop down to like non-existent, and then I would just die.
Yeah, besides a couple hard crashes, I had one weird patch where I was exploring, and there was a building that had an energy shield that there's this stuff I didn't have the ability to like access, and I ended up like somehow getting stuck between like this energy field and the door. Like I was like stuck in this like 6-inch gap. So, I'm clipping through everything, but I can't get in or out. I'm like, so I had to like quit to main menu. Annoyingly, the game doesn't have like a reload last checkpoint button. You have to like quit to the title screen and then continue. So I'm like, well, that's one point where I got stuck. And then the other big bug, which was annoying. There, near the end of the game, there was a part that I found to be the most fun and exciting sequence of the whole game, perhaps. And I was like, this is really cool. I'm having a blast. And then it's like, okay, well now, push this button combination to like continue. And then it just wouldn't like recognize that input. And they're like, do the thing. And I'm like, I'm pushing the buttons. They're like, you got to do the thing. Hurry. We're in danger or whatever. I'm like, I'm doing the thing. And then like, and now I can't even just sit like somehow like it, like the enemies wouldn't even like hurt me. So I'm like, I can't even let them kill me to like try over. So I had to like, so I was like, well, that really deflated this coolest moment. But then it was okay because I tried it again. And I'm like, well, now I get to play through this whole thing again, which is fun. Those are really the only like major bugs other than like textures dropping for me.
I've had a few crashes as well on the PC. I mean, nothing like Kurt where I hit an area, like a point that I just can't get past. It's just sort of been random crashes every now and then. Not too frequent, but I mean, over that 10 hours, I think I've had it happen to me like 4 times. So that's still, once every couple hours of play.
One time there's the Kobo matter, part of the puzzle solving in the Jedi meditation chambers and elsewhere on the planet involves like laying out a little path of this stuff to like, you got to start at the source and then draw a little path to get to the thing you want to destroy. And sometimes it's kind of tedious. And I did one, and then when it destroys it, there's a lot of like purple sparkly particle effects, and that's when my game crashed at one point. And I was like, oh, maybe it was just like because it was like on Kobo with all these particle effects, it just overwhelmed it. So now whenever I do one of those, I'm like Indiana Jones. I'm like, don't look at it. We can't let this be on screen. We don't need to let it try and render this.
Yeah, I will say now that I just earlier today hit the point in the game where you can finally leave Kobo and go on to the next planet. And yeah, I definitely have noticed on that planet now performance has jumped back up again.
How badly has the stain of the PC affected your opinion of this game? 'Cause I'm gonna just say right here, this is probably my already. Maybe it'll change after I've had more time to sit on this, but I think it's my favorite Star Wars game of all time. Slash one of my favorite video games of all time. I'm just really enjoying it.
I think if it wasn't for the fact that I knew that I would want if it wasn't Star Wars, if it didn't have Star Wars in the name, it would be the second game in my life I've ever returned.
What's the first one? Yeah. Can we know?
Final Fantasy 13.
Oh,
that game was awful. So garbage.
I just like playing this game. I'm like, this is this somehow like the most Star Wars anything has ever been? Because there's nothing that I've encountered in the game that feels like this isn't Star Wars. Like, this is kind of weird choice. I'm like, everything is like, oh, there's a weird, silly little frog guy. There's a cool droid design. There's, cool spaceships. That's, all these themes and just serious storytelling mixed with like goofy stuff. There's so many funny things in this game. Mostly the battle droids. I love the battle droids so much in this game.
From what I've seen from people posting, it's like a really good mix of familiar Star Wars stuff and completely new stuff that still feels like Star Wars, right? That's like new species and areas and stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Fallen Order and Survivor is there's a lot of, compared to other Star Wars things these days, there's not a lot of like, it's expecting you to have consumed all these other Star Wars things. Like you could go in without knowing much about Star Wars and not be like you're missing out, which is kind of cool. But there is a lot of other stuff, I guess. I don't know. It's not like shoving references in your face, I guess.
I feel like the first one was more, I guess, grounded in what we already know. Like you go into Kashyyyk and you're seeing Wookiees and you're Sagarera, etc. A lot of that stuff. And I feel like, at least from what I've played so far, I mean, yeah, it's definitely taking you to some familiar locations and stuff. But like you said, I feel like there's a lot more of like, here's some weirdo aliens. Here's droids you haven't seen before. Here's, fucking mouthball guys.
I'm curious to see too, like how it feels by the time I finally get to play it, assumably someday. Like I've never read like, at least again from reading people's posts, it seems like there are some High Republic tie-ins. I can say that in a non-spoiler way since I haven't even actually seen any of it.
A high degree of the main plot revolves around High Republic stuff. That's all the little optional puzzle chambers are like from the High Republic era, and then there is part of the main plot, like, and because of Cal's ability to like sense echoes of like past events tied to objects, you get some like flashbacks showing you a few things from that era. So there's definitely a non-insignificant amount of. That's one of the reasons why I like this game. Oh, it's the original trilogy, because that's, takes place in the dark times. We've got all the stormtroopers, we got the Empire, but there's battle droids running around being silly little guys. So we got the prequel stuff, and then there's like, now there's High Republic stuff in this game. Like, well, this has just everything for me. But I would say, not having read any High Republic books, you are fine as long as you know that the High Republic was before the prequels by a couple hundred years.
Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do like, so story-wise, I'll say, so far, I am liking the game. There's, at first glance, some of the big bad guys' motivations seem a little silly to me, but I'm assuming I'm going to get more context as I get later into it.
I really want to reconvene for episode we talk about the story. My take, without being spoilery, is I preferred the story of Fallen Order. I think it's much more smaller scale. The character focused, I guess. I love what they do with the characters in Survivor and how they've grown and changed. Overall, I think maybe the story in Survivor is a little bit too sprawling, and some of the characters that aren't like super close to Cal aren't as fleshed out as they could be.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
still liked it.
For me, I think it's sort of like, okay, like I did in Fallen Order, I did like the whole idea of finding the holocron, keeping it out of the Empire's hands, but then everything else with the whole the Zepho or whatever, like I just didn't really feel that part of the plot. Like,
Well,
I don't know. I think it's just like we've done so many like there's been so many other games I've played where it's all like you have to explore the ruins and the artifacts of the ancient powerful aliens who have all died out and are gone. And I don't know, it's like such a sci-fi trope that I've played through a million times that
yeah, that's one thing I was surprised that they basically dropped the whole Zepho thing. There's a little bit of reference to the Zepho in the game, but it's sort of like a throwaway, like, remember those guys? Remember how that was like our whole deal? Whatever.
Yeah, that's
the game
too bad.
does take place. So what interesting to me, I don't know if I can reach it. No. The Jedi Battle Scars tie-in novel. I liked what it did for the characters, and after playing the story, I feel like it's a worthless book. Because basically the main gist of this, nothing they do in that book matters, except Marin bangs a chick in Kel's room. It's really the most notable incident of that book. Nothing they do. They're looking for some super tech that can like stealth you from the Empire or whatever, which they don't end up getting, but neither does the Empire. And what was good about the book is getting to know the characters more and their motivations, because they all start to disagree on what their mission is. Where Seer was like, I just want to preserve the legacy of the Jedi for future generations because I don't think the fight against the Empire is winnable. Cal says, I want to, destroy the Empire. Marin just kind of wants to like take out her pain on the Empire. And they don't ever all like agree, and they're almost about to split ways in that book. And then by the end of the book, they're like, let's stay together because we love each other and we're a family. And I'm like, okay, so they're still together. And then the game starts and like, hey, we all split up and parted ways because we all had different ideas about. So like, why didn't they just do that at the end of that book? What was the point of that book? Because nothing in the book like really leads up to or connects in any meaningful way with the plot of Survivor, other than you see how Grease loses one of his arms.
Wow.
Which they don't. He's got a prosthetic arm in the game, and they don't.
Just
he just has it. They don't say.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering about that because I was looking at that and I'm like trying to think back to Fallen Order, and I was all like, did like one of the Inquisitor cut off his arm at some point?
That's literally the only event of the book that has any bearing on the plot of the game. The fifth brother cuts it off, and that's another thing I don't like.
How embarrassing to have your arm cut off by the dumbest Inquisitor of them all.
At least
the worst.
All of the character like POV writing talks about how dumb his hat is. Like whenever it's like, it's like, oh, this guy with the stupidest hat I've ever seen. Anyways, I liked the book, and then I played the game, and I'm like, the book didn't matter too much. It was like, if you like the characters, it's probably still worth reading, but I really
just kind of a missed opportunity, it sounds like, because it would have been really cool if it tied in important ways and told you some backstory stuff that, I mean, obviously you don't want something that people feel like they missed out on if they didn't read it. But it would be cool if it was like, oh, it fills in some cool gaps and sets up some
Right,
important things.
like the Battlefront novel, like had a self-contained, important feeling story that let you get to know the characters more before you played the Battlefront 2 campaign. This one, you already knew the characters. You just kind of there's a good, like I said, most of what's appealing about that book is getting in their heads. But anyways, we're not talking about the book. We're talking about the game.
Yeah.
So,
let's talk about actual gameplay.
Okay.
Now I know mechanics.
Yeah, because I mean, even though you were really only able to experience Coruscant, I feel like that still gives you still get to experience a fair chunk of, like, you still get to do some combat. You still get to do a lot of, like, the running, jumping, platforming type stuff, just not quite as advanced as you do on some of the other planets.
I can think of 0 ways in which this game didn't improve on Fallen Order.
Yeah, it kind of starts with, like, most of the important stuff that you unlocked through the course of the first game you already have, and then right away they're like, here's some new stuff. I don't think it's really a spoiler that matters to say, like, you get a cool, like, grapple hook thing right away. It's like, oh cool, I can get to even more places.
The most convenient ability get in the whole game. Like, most of them, like, because all of the abilities you get throughout the story, and they're like, some of them are similar to the first game where, like, Cal, like, remembers something from his past that helps him, like, learn something new. But this one, they're just like, oh, I found this grapple hook in the garbage. I bet I can fix it. And they're like, okay, cool.
It's kind of funny how you're walking around Coruscant, like, presumably these are, like, people's houses and businesses and stuff, and you're constantly going like, oh, look at this cool chunk of crystal or something. Yoink, that's mine now. Ooh, hey, this is mine too. I'm gonna unlock your door and go in your house and steal your thing. I'm like, okay, well, whatever.
It's the poor people section. It's fine.
Yeah.
Speaking of the poor people section, there's that part on Coruscant. I don't remember why, but you drop, like, a big, huge thing down a hole. Like a big, huge metal thing. I think you, like, cut the supports or something and it drops down.
Yeah, there's, like, some cranes and stuff, and there's stuff you're walking on that breaks. Yeah, and there's, I think you're going to say that there's people down there.
Yeah, right? If you look down that hole where you drop that thing, you can clearly see that it would have fallen right on, like, an entire district of homes and just killed hundreds of people.
There's also, like, a lot of, like, airstrikes and, like, speeder laser barrages going off. I mean, I guess the Empire doesn't care, right? I get it, but it's like, wow, they're hitting a lot of people and buildings and property, like, off screen behind you for sure, right? These, like, LATs and TIE fighters and things are blowing a lot of stuff up.
But back to gameplay, I do find it interesting that, like you say, you think it's improved in every way, and I was going to say that almost every problem with the actual gameplay from Fallen Order is still present in Survivor, in my mind.
I mean, it could still be better, but still have it's still.
I mean, it's a lot smoothed out, like less janky uses of some of these things, right? Mostly.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff, okay, like I haven't had, like, an incredibly frustrating, bugged out slide down a hill and have to time grabbing the rope, force pulling the rope, but it just flies over my fucking head instead, or something stupid like that.
One thing I did in the accessibility, I turned off fall damage. I'm like, it's not like, when you think of fall damage, you think, well, when I hit the ground, I take damage. In Fallen Order, either when you hit the ground, you're fine or you're dead. And turning off fall damage is when you fall into a bottomless pit or fall off a ledge that's too tall. When you spawn back on top, you'll have lost a small chunk of your health bar. So if you keep doing that, eventually you'll die, which is basically just punishing me for sucking at platforming, which sometimes, like Leo said, can be janky. And I said, I don't feel like having to respawn because I'm goofing at platforming. And they have that little feature that says, I don't have to ever worry about dying just because I sucked at a platforming segment. If I'm going to die, it's because some enemy's going to kill me, not because I missed a jump.
So yeah, I mean, I guess they're maybe a little bit better, but it still seems like grabbing onto ledges and running on the walls and stuff like that is still like a little inconsistent sometimes. Like you just sometimes will not grab a thing for no reason, or not start running on the wall, or just stuff like that could have used it. But honestly, it's still a pretty minor complaint compared to all the graphical problems for me. Um, but then, like, actually getting into combat,
not as tight combat as some other games.
yeah, as I would like it to be, it still feels very much like the first one, where like your dodge button is almost useless. You gotta, you gotta rely on your block more, even though, like, for me it feels very weird to like parry a giant monster swinging its fist at you, and you'd be like, well, you knock his arm away with your lightsaber. It just feels really dumb.
I agree. It's very strange when there's some things like a lightsaber shouldn't be able to block a Rancor punching you.
But yeah, I mean, you can still dodge. It's just dodge timing feels very inconsistent to me. Like,
there is definitely a balance you need to strike between dodging, especially on harder enemies. Um, I think we come from very different takes on the gameplay, because I don't like or play games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls.
Same.
And those Souls-like games, and you do, and I'm just like, I want a little action game where I can slice people with a lightsaber, and it does that well enough for me. And I feel like it's fun enough to play on normal difficulty and hit some parries and get the like executions or whatever. And I think I don't have any issues with the combat. And they added dismemberment of just arms and legs on stormtroopers, but it's so satisfying to like whip your lightsaber in a circle and then like everybody falls over with their arms falling off. There's some just super brutal stuff in that game, whether it's just accidental attacks you make on people or the pre-animated like finishers. There's just some really hilariously brutal things you can do to stormtroopers, which is usually just the best thing for me. Like, that's one of the reasons I love Battlefront 2 so much, is the physics and just watching stormtroopers die. I'm like, well, that's great. And now I can do that in Jedi Survivor with a blaster. I love sneaking up on stormtroopers and then doing the Red Dead, like paint them and then shoot them all at once, and they go flying over the edge or whatever.
So it sounds like that's like the biggest difference overall, right? Not that they like really removed or fixed or changed that much, but they've added so much extra stuff, like so many new styles and collectibles and mechanics and things.
There's so many different styles too. Yeah, like the crossguard lightsaber, I don't like it at all. It's like a broadsword. It's really slow, does high damage. Not my thing.
See, and that's what I'm excited to try out, because that's like my normal style. Like when I play like Souls games, is
I don't even know how you're supposed to use it.
A big heavy sword.
It's like I get hit 10 times before I can swing on one guy. But the blaster stance is so good. Even though the blaster stance, I feel like I wish there was more skills in the skill tree for that related to the lightsaber. There's only like one or two, and the rest are like based on the blaster, which I guess makes sense. But so it's sort of a weird little utility rather than like your main. I never do the whole fight with the blaster. It's always like let me pick some guys off as I go in, and then in the middle of the fight maybe I'll shoot some guys who are wounded. But there's so many things in that game that I just really love. All of the side characters on Kobo are great. I love the saloon mechanics on Kobo. There's a saloon that's sort of run down, and throughout the course of the game, you can find people throughout the planet that go back to the saloon, and it becomes more and more lively as the game goes on. And I really like that because every character in that saloon is like fun to talk to, because like you could always just go back, interact with everybody in that saloon, and they have interesting things to say every time. You get to know them. The people you recruit are. I love the DJ droid. The music is fun. The Who, you can just tell them to only play this artist, and then you can have the Who be the only band that plays in the saloon.
Yeah, I love that they brought them back again for more
Yeah,
music.
they have more than one track now too. Yeah, the things you do there, you collect fish around the world, which is great because you have to talk to the little scuba guy every time, and he's got this Scottish accent, and he's always telling you about these weird fish stories. There's a garden on the roof, which is pretty fun. You can find a botanist who will like help tend to that.
I love the bartender droid. It's like honestly one of my favorite droid designs I've seen.
There's so many good droid designs too, because a lot of it's obviously designs that have come from other things, but there's some that are original to the game, and it's like these just everything that's original, like new designs for this game, just feel like they're designed so perfectly in Star Wars. Like this is such a good Star Wars design. I love the bounty hunter lady, or more like the bounty hunter. She gives you. Remember the bounty hunters from Fallen Order? There's a lady in the bar who will give you tips on where to find those guys, and you can kill them and like exchange that for currency.
So when I kind of got excited when I found her in the saloon, because at the beginning of the game, there's a point when you see your like wanted poster on a billboard, like a Cal Kestis wanted.
Yeah.
And next, and on the billboard next to you is another wanted poster for like this Nautilin lady with some goggles and stuff. And I'm like, wow, she looks really cool. I wonder if I ever get to meet her. And like, and then then she shows up, and I'm like, hey, that's the lady.
She's like Lady Cad Bane. She's got little rocket boots on her feet and pistols.
Big wide brim hat.
Yeah, she mostly just sits in that thing and insults you for a while.
Another thing I liked was the design of there's a High Republic. There's a droid from the High Republic era.
Yeah.
And I really liked how they actually made it look just totally different from any other droid that we've seen before. Because, like, that's one thing I always hated about,
KOTOR?
Like KOTOR, and then also, you know, like, same thing, the Old Republic, the MMO, is, like, all the droids look like the same as droids we see in modern Star Wars. They're just, you know, a couple greeblies have changed on them.
Yeah. Yeah, the High Republic droid, I agree, the design is very cool. It's very Art Deco, and the character is also just kind of a fun character. It's another one of those characters who ends up just sort of being a vendor, because you call them collectibles, but really what you're collecting is different types of currency. Well, let's get on Kobo, you get rocks. On Jedi, you get ancient scrolls. On Kobo, you also get data discs. On Kobo, you also get bounty pucks. And those are just different things you can turn into different vendors to mostly buy
hairstyles.
Yeah, hairstyles, clothes, and components for your weapons, which is the other thing that's just such a huge improvement, is the cosmetic options. You could customize your lightsaber in the last game. It seems even more detailed in this game. Customizing your blaster is super cool. And then all the ways to mix and match your cosmetics are fun. I was saying earlier in Discord, I think all of the hair options for Cal kind of feel limited, because they all almost feel like sort of meme options. It's like, well, here's a mullet, or here's like the hockey hair, or the hockey hair with like the headband. There's even there's an achievement called Cobra Cal, where if you go into like the training session at a meditation point wearing the headband, you'll get that achievement.
There's one for like drop kicking people while you have the mullet on or something like that. So yeah, they're kind of like not serious hairstyles. They're kind of goofier.
Yeah, like I like the mohawk, but the mohawk's also sort of could be like a meme.
They also the facial hairs all are weird,
kind of goofy,
in my opinion, because they all just, unless you're doing just like the basic short stubble, everything else besides that looks like your character has a fake like costume facial hair glued on his face, like not even very well.
The longer facial hair, and it might just be a Series S thing. Maybe on systems or PCs with more power it doesn't happen, but like in certain lighting, like the light catches like every single like hair follicle, so instead of it starts to look like it's like glowing and like it's like a bright orange color, and it's like, this does not look good.
I really want my Cal to look cool and not goofy, so I hope I end up liking some of the options, but I bet the actor appreciates being able to try out and see what these would actually look like on him, and he's like, oh, now I know what hair I'm gonna have in real life.
Yeah. In New Journey Plus, that you get some perks, and one of them just randomizes your cosmetics every time you respawn.
Okay.
I think that you can also get like a rainbow lightsaber in New Game Plus.
Wow.
But yeah, the cosmetics are really fun, and there's a lot of them that I'm like, this is a little too goofy. My guy needs to look cool. I'll save the goofy Cal for when I play through with Bethany.
I'm still disappointed though about the difficulty I have to play it on right now. Playing it on Jedi Knight is honestly now feeling way too easy for me. Like I was enjoying playing it on Jedi Master more, and I really hate that I can't play it on that level just because of the way the game is performing. Like,
by the time you get through it, you can do your New Game Plus and play it on a harder difficulty.
Although, like I said, now I'm on to the second planet, and performance has been better, so I might bump my difficulty back up again here for that planet.
Watch out for the big scorpions. Those guys are tough. There's also an interesting thing about the blaster is there's some enemies that it's pretty worthless against. But the big scorpion is like blaster proof. They bounce off.
No.
Like the Rancor, like I can fight a Rancor and keep my distance and keep shooting it every now and then. The other thing is you have limited shots, and the only way to recharge your shots, doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense gameplay wise for balance, is you have to get hits with your lightsaber to get shots back. So you can never just like hide. You have to actually, engage with your lightsaber.
I guess my biggest question on kind of like mechanics, difficulty, collectability type stuff is, Joe, like when you got to the end of the game, did you feel like you had a good amount of skill points in the skill trees, or did you feel like, because there's a lot of different styles and trees to develop. Did you feel like, okay, I have to ignore these because I really have to, I don't have enough points to, spread them around, or was it like
I was putting stuff into getting more health and more force when I could, and then I ended up settling on going all in on the blaster and the double blade and maxed those out. And by the end, so I didn't really have many skills in the other stances, and then there was a force tree that I was like, oh, that looks fun. I wish I could have like put more into that. Basically, that has like lift and stuff. You can just like lift troopers into the air and they'll hover there for a little bit, like flailing, like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. And I didn't do much with that. But by the end of the game, I was like, well, I'm equipped to like handle this, and I had like 11 stims or whatever. I don't know what the max is. Maybe it's 15 or 20.
I feel like a lot of the, at least from what I've got so far, at least in like the single saber style, a lot of the unlocks for it just don't really seem to add all that much to the combat, to be honest.
Yeah, the skill trees for the double blade and the blaster, I did really like most of those. I'm like, oh, this is cool, and actually I do implement this into my fighting style. Whereas some of the other ones, when I was playing around with them earlier, I was like, got a new skill. I'm like, I don't know, I don't like doing this. The double blade has some very cool animations, and like there's a because all of them have a saber throw, which I didn't know. The game doesn't tell you because it's one of those skills you had from the first game. So I guess maybe it assumed because if you hold block and hit Y or triangle, it throws your lightsaber. I didn't know that until I was a few hours in and I saw like things the game doesn't tell you. I'm like, oh, I thought this was like a skill that they took away from me between games. Nope, it was there the whole time. The double blade has when you can upgrade that you just hold it out there and you can like drag it around as like a lawnmower that chops through things.
That's like
Like
straight
it,
from Jedi Outcast.
yeah, it like doesn't. You can choose to like not recall it right away. The reason I think the reason I got so addicted to the double blade is like the first game. If you do a perfect deflect on a laser, any subsequent laser that hits you will also go back to its source. Because with all the other blades, or stances, a perfect deflect will send that one back to its source, and any others that hit you while you're still holding it just kind of go wherever. I think the dual blade has one that will like somehow split a laser in two to go back at two targets.
The single blade lets you can deflect two lasers in a row with a upgrade.
Yes, and the double blade just there's no limit. So whenever there's those stormtroopers that have the Z6s, the miniguns, and they hit you, or a droideka, or whatever, or there's this 10 stormtroopers all shooting at you at once, and you get the perfect deflect, and then everybody's dead, and it's very fun and satisfying to just deflect 20 lasers at once, and then everybody's on the ground and it was too satisfying for me to let go. By default, they go back to the person who shot them. There's one that sends it to other people. So sometimes, if there's a bunch of melee guys in one Z6 guy, you can deflect his whole barrage and it'll hit the other melee guys
Take
coming
his
at you.
Squad out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fun. I'm not a big fan of just a double blade life in general, but the gameplay and the skills with that and some of the animations I end up really liking it. And also I was like, well, I want to do single blade and the blaster, but then you have like this half a lightsaber that's still hanging on your hip that never gets used. I'm like, well, that's weird. I got to at least use double blade or dual blade. Well, I guess if you use the crossguard, he still uses it because it's like a broadsword, and I guess he likes to have the extra length to the handle.
Mm-hmm. I guess my other question about the skills is, like, is there a way to reset your skill points at any point if you just want to reallocate?
Yeah, I think you can just wipe it clean at any time you want. I think,
okay,
or maybe it's like a one time you get to do that. I don't remember, but there is a way to.
That sounds nice. Because I think the big thing is like early in the game where I got to, I'm like, okay, should I invest in these lightsaber styles? I don't know which ones I'm going to like yet or how soon I'm going to get new ones, But if you can just retrain at some point, then that would be fun for trying the different styles out. Because that sounds like the big plus to me is like try the different styles and see what's cool, Oh, I was going to ask too, I assume the skill trees are pretty different from in the first game, right? Like obviously there's like whole new trees, but a lot of it's not just repeating the same abilities. It's like fresh new takes on them, I assume.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a couple of lightsaber like combat moves that are repeats. Mm-hmm. But there's no like force powers that the only things that are like the same is like, oh, Cal's maximum life is increased, Cal's maximum force is increased, BD1 stims regenerate more, they give you those things are kind of the same, and some of like maybe the combat animations, but for the most part they're all pretty new and unique. And the force, because you can mind trick guys now, which I don't do too much, but it's kind of fun to like get some heat off you. I love how the enemies have infighting between the Empire, the Bedlam Raiders, and the Wildlife. They'll fight each other. And there was a boss that was kicking my butt, and there was a big Bedlam Raider guy with a hammer, like on a ledge up top. So I used the force to yank him a couple times until I got him over the edge. So he fell next to the big boss I was trying to fight, and then I let those two fight each other for a bit. So he softened up the boss for me.
Nice.
I also love how there's friendly fire, because like the stormtroopers and the battle droids throw grenades all the time. Even if you don't use the force to redirect the grenade, they'll still end up like damaging each other with grenades all the time. Like, oh, there's a purge trooper running at me, and then all of a sudden a stormtrooper commander threw a grenade and killed him for me. I was like, okay. one of my favorite things from the game. What I was going to say is one of the other reasons I felt fine putting off exploration is because whenever I did decide to branch off and explore, I would run into areas that I didn't have access to yet. I was like, well, I'm gonna get all of these by the end of the game. I want to explore when I actually have the ability to explore everything and not like, oh, what's over here? Oh, can't go here yet. What's over here? Oh, can't go here yet. I'm like, oh, I'll come back when I have access. And for now, I'll only explore the rumors because people you talk to in the outpost will say, there's a real mean Mogu over there, or there, oh, this, did you hear this, a DJ trapped in the mountains or whatever. And then those will get added to your map so you can check it out on your own time. And usually those aren't like restricted by some skill you don't have yet. But so I was like, oh, I'll just wait till I have all the skills to go exploring, which is handy.
So that does mean you're spending more time on Leg Planet.
Because that's probably where the most exploring is.
Yeah.
And people were saying there is fast travel between meditation points.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is one thing that they improved on from the first game.
It makes a huge difference, especially because I think Kobo is like way bigger than even Zepho was, which was really big. And there's a lot of like subterranean and mountain stuff. It would be insane to try and go from one side to the other just to like collect one thing without fast travel. One of my favorite things of the game is I've talked about it a lot on Discord, but I want to point out too, if you're playing the game, and I could only give you one piece of advice, would be if the enemies don't know you're there, don't attack them until they're done talking. Because every single time there's an enemy talking and you just sit and wait and listen, it's always worth it, because it's whether it's the B1s talking to each other or B2s or stormtroopers, it's always something really funny. And oftentimes, if you've let that play out, after you fight them, there will be follow-up dialogue that's like contextually related. There was a point where I think it's when it introduces you to an enemy that's just a roller mine that seeks you out. There was two B1s and then like a Bedlam Raider guy, and they were like, the B1 comes running out of like the mine running out of like the cave with like a mine chasing him, and he's screaming and he blows up. And the Bedlam Raider's like, oh, I thought someone was supposed to clear those out. And he goes in there, and then another mine comes out and kills that guy. And then there's one B1 left, and he's like, well, I guess I'm in charge now. This is a good day for me. And then I finally jumped down there, and then I still didn't like start fighting. I just held my lightsaber so he couldn't hurt me, because B1s and stormtroopers, if you're just holding deflect, they can never damage you. And he was just like, wait, don't, I just got promoted or whatever. It's like, you're ruining my big day or something like that. Like what he said to me was like in the context of what had just happened. And so if you had just immediately jumped in and attacked, you would never have got all that.
Yeah, when I did that, he was all like, I'll show you why I got promoted.
Oh, yeah, something like that. Then there's a lot of like B1s that are like being really cocky about like, it's in my programming to murder Jedi or whatever. And then like the BX droids or the Bedlam Raider people are like, statistically, that's unlikely to happen, buddy.
Is it like Red Dead Redemption 2 where you can like insult or greet people? Oh, that is
the best.
But sometimes he will have, like, Cal will say stuff in response to, like there's a point where this B1 is talking all about how like he loves being up on this cliff, but he doesn't like doing the work, so he wants to get some of the other droids to do the work for him. But then if he does that, then he won't get to stay up on the cliff and see the view anymore. So it's a big...
It's a dilemma.
Yeah, and then after you jump up there and kill him, then Cal goes, dilemma solved.
Yeah, sometimes Cal will have quips that are related to what they were saying. Yeah. It's usually the battle droids that have the best stuff, but even like the B2s and the BX droids and the Magna Guards that have interesting things to say. But the stormtroopers tend to as well, especially because like the purge troopers, are like they're the same voices from the first game where they're just like way too like pretentious and like bloodthirsty, and then the stormtroopers are all just kind of timid and dorky or like way too enthusiastic. Like I think there was like a patrol on Kobo, and this purge trooper was like, "How many traitors have you annihilated?" And he's like, I've killed so many traitors, man. You don't even know."
What about cute pets? You were able to get like a couple kind of pets or something in the first game, right? Or do they have that in this game?
Well, you have BD1 again, who now in it, because we are talking about how much the cosmetics have improved. You can now customize BD1. It's not just like a palette swap. You can change out. He's got different components: legs, body, head, eyes, and audio receptors. You can collect different components to mix and match his parts, and then he's got 3 different like paint slots, and then like your lightsaber and your blaster, you have condition, like so you could be like in pristine condition or like weathered to hell. So that's great. BD1 is still the best.
I like some of the animations they've done with him. Like when you jump, he like will half fall off your back when you land. Like he'll like one leg will slip off and he'll just be hanging on by one, and he'll be like, and then
my favorite animation is when you find these little force shard things. I don't know what the game calls them. Basically, you can find these things that'll like increase your force or your health. And Cal sits in and he kneels and does a little meditate. And BD1 like plops onto his little butt with his legs splayed out, and then his feet kind of twiddle back and forth as he's like waiting for Cal. That's the best animation in the whole game. There's boglings from the first game, which because a good trend in gaming is allowing everybody to pet the dog or pet the cat. Jedi Fallen Order, there are boglings everywhere, which are an invasive species to Kobo because they came over on the Mantis apparently in between games, but they just bounce around anywhere. And every single bogling you run into, you can just stop and pet. And you can also pet the weird chicken horses that you can ride around.
Yeah, you can get these chocobo like things you can ride around on.
That's what I forgot to even mention. Like the whole of Kobo, particularly the outpost, is just a freaking western town. There's like a lady who tends to the chicken horses. Her name is Mosey, and she has like a drawl. And there's like the saloon is like made of wood, and it's just like it's a little western town. The whole thing there.
You mentioned too the like on the customization options. Like that's one of the few things I did get to experience at the start of the game. You know, there's only like a few color sets at the start, but I really liked that you can set the like worn level because I'm like, oh yeah, I want all these things to be chipped up and dirty and super super weathered. Yes,
I
and
always like change it after like, oh, I'm on this planet. Like, oh, after I spent time on like Jeddah or like exploring the caves, I switched BD1 and my weapons to be all weathered, and then like, okay,
dirty.
time to clean them up again. Like I changed my outfits way too often in that game. I'm like, gotta switch it up. Oh, I'm in the cold now. I gotta change my outfit again.
And it's cool that they're not just a preset costume or a preset BD1. You can tweak each little different color and have like a bunch of different colors if you wanted on all the different pieces and set the shine and set the weathering. I think that's
I really liked how you have all of the color options for your lightsaber blade that you got at the end of the first game. Because in Fallen Order you had green or blue, and then you went to Ilum and got a new lightsaber crystal, and at that point you had access to all these other less common colors, and you just have those from the get-go at the start of the game. I did yellow most of the time, or for a little while, and then I switched over to white because I ended up everything I had and wore was sort of like a red and gray color scheme, and white looked the best with that. But I like you still got like the aqua and the magenta and yellow and orange and purple.
But I assume you cannot have a red blade, and I assume you cannot have the dark saber, right?
The New Game Plus, in addition to like the rainbow blade, lets you have a red blade because it's New Game Plus and it's whatever. But you are correct. Black and red are not options. Pretty much every other color is. Um, and what's also cool is every single color has a different sound profile. So if you change color, so if you rock in a blue lightsaber and then you switch to green, the sound of your lightsaber is different. Every single lightsaber has a different, like the pitch and the hum is slightly different from the other colors, which
That's
is
cool.
very cool. The other thing in the saloon that you fill out that I thought was, in a lot of games these days, there's like a, an in-universe game people
Like
play,
a
like
card
in
game.
like Gwent, or in Forbidden West, it was like this little tactics game that because you collect the pieces as you go. And in this game, they have one, and I actually thought it was really fun because it's simple. It's not like a game that you could sit there and like learn. It's not like a minis game. All it is every time you kill an enemy and scan it, which happens all the time again, and you don't have to re-scan enemies you've scanned in the last game. You don't have to scan a stormtrooper again. Anytime you kill an enemy and scan it, it gets added to your Holo Tactics game. And all Holo Tactics is you pick an opponent like one of the characters from the saloon, and you have to beat them in 3 rounds. And they just have some of these enemies, just any enemies from the game. It might be like a B2 and a B1 and a stormtrooper, and you have so many points to spend on your units. You put them on the table, and then you just watch them fight. There's no control over it once the fight starts. All of your tactical choices are, how do I want to spend my points? Because any points you don't spend carry over to the next round. So if you think you can get some guys to win a fight, or you see, oh, they've got a droideka down there and this guy, maybe I want these units to counter them. And then it's fun to just watch the simulated battle between, because it's like hologramized, but it's clearly just like the combat engine with these little units running around on the table fighting each other, which is fun to see how just the simulation plays out. And that's all the game is. And it's surprisingly I haven't beaten the last opponent yet, because it's tricky. It's like, oh, do I want to bring the sentry droid or this one? Like, it's hard to figure out which units are the best to bring for that. But I enjoyed that.
But you're right, it does sound fun. I mean, there's whole YouTube channels currently that just do that in Jedi Fallen Order with the built-in battle thing, right? And like spawn guys to fight each other and be like, what if these guys fought these guys?
Yeah,
it's
I
kind of
mean,
fun to
sometimes those are
watch.
fun to watch. There's whole games like that like, what if 10,000 Spartans fought 500 Marines or whatever? There's games that are built like that. It's kind of like that, but on like a micro scale. I can't think of anything I don't like about the game, to be honest, besides the fact that you guys can't experience it in the same way that it should be. I really dislike that. Like I said,
Yeah.
I think the story from the first game is just a better overall story, but it's not like I didn't like this story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to Kobo is really cool. I feel like some of the other locations might not be as interesting as in the last game visually.
Can you spoil what planets you go to, or would you rather keep it secret?
We all know you go to Kobo. We all know you go to Coruscant. We've already said you go to Jeddah, which points to me. I called out from a couple frames in one of the earlier trailers where I said, "Is Marin on Jeddah?" Yes, Marin is on Jeddah. Marin, coolest character in the whole game, in my opinion.
That's a good question.
I really like what, because a lot of the trailers, especially the early ones, were like, "Where's Grease? Where's Marin? Where's Seer?" They're all very involved with this plot of the game, and I think Marin is very cool. She's leveled up, I guess you could say.
And having the friend NPC helper that can do combo moves and stuff with you, that's another new mechanic. So how
Right.
present is that in the game, and did it seem like it added a lot?
Very fun when they're there, because you either have Marin or Bode. Bode is your new jetpack friend that you meet early in the game. You basically they fight alongside you. They damage people on their own, but you can command them to Marin will basically stick somebody to the ground with magic, and you can go hit them when they're vulnerable. And Bode will just do like a jetpack drop kick, which is really funny on everybody he does it on, especially if it insta kills a character, because they just go crumpling. It's very fun. It's not very often. It's only in certain story missions that you get them. And even sometimes, if they're present in the story thing, they might be doing something. Oh, I'm going to go over there. I'll meet you at the end, or I'm going to stay and guard the ship. So it's pretty rare in the game that you actually get a companion, but it's fun when they're there.
That's interesting, actually, because it seems like that's the type of mechanic that I would see being like a core mechanic of the game. Like you always have someone
like
with you is kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah, I was expecting that too, but it's like a little bonus thing that's just based on the story mission you're doing. And you don't get to ever pick who, which is good. I'm glad you don't get to pick, because I would pick Marin over Bode every time. But Bode, I think, combat wise, is maybe more useful just because drop kicking guys is really fun. But yeah, it's not a common thing, but it is fun when you get to do it.
I've never had a fight go on long enough where I even remember to use their ability. Same thing with like the double sticks to like slow down time. I've used that. The only time I've ever ended up using that is the one time it was all like, here's this ability, do it.
Oh yeah, that's
and
a big change in the gameplay.
And I've completely forgot about it because I never have a fight last long enough to actually use it.
Yeah, it's sort of like almost like a give me a breather thing where like, oh, I need a free hit on this guy. Let me slow down time so I can get in a hit. Yeah, I like that they made Cal's sort of signature slow things down move rather than like just a regular move he has for puzzle solving and combat. Like now it's just like his super, because it was never like super fun or useful in combat or puzzle solving in the first game.
Yeah, most of the time when it was all like, you have to freeze, slow down this thing that's spinning really fast at just the right time, it was more frustrating than ever fun because it was just all like, you'd be like, oh shit, I didn't time my freeze quite right. Now I gotta wait for it to wear off, and then I gotta do it again. And
yeah, it feels a lot better to have just the triggers map to push and pull, and that you can get a what I really like is because you can pull and just hold a guy there and he'll wiggle, and it just feels real mean to just hold him there, and then
you can just like tickle him with a feather or something.
You can like stab him in the gut, or chuck him off a mountain or whatever. I don't know if they patched it out, because the first time I tried it, because he'll by default hold the first guy with his left hand, which if you're in the blaster stance is where he's got his blaster. So I'm like holding this blaster underneath the B1's chin, and I hit the shoot button and it just blew his head off. I'm like, well, that's awesome. And then I tried it with a stormtrooper and other B1s, and it just never did it again. I'm like, oh, I just wanted to execute that guy. But you can upgrade the pull where you can hold two guys at once. So you just are carrying around two stormtroopers like helplessly, and then just let their friends shoot him in the back or throw him off a cliff. There's one mission where you're sort of in this facility, and there were some stormtroopers, and you're kind of in the air ducts, and you see them below, like talking about like, do you think there's actually a Jedi here? And then I just yoinked both of them into the air vents and dismembered them silently, and they were never heard from again.
There's when you're like force holding objects, like your character animations get really wonky. I mean, there's a lot of weird animations in the game already.
Yeah.
But like when you're holding, because it's like your hands will stay in the same place, and your like arms move around your hand, like they rotate, pivoting on your wrist, and like sometimes like your arm. Yeah, and sometimes your arm will like pivot in directions that like naturally it never would.
Sounds weird.
And then there's other stuff like a couple like BB-8's legs are like almost always twisted.
BD1
or BD1's legs are almost
BB-8's in this game. Oh my god!
His legs
secret origin story
are almost always twisted as he's standing on your back. And it looks really weird. Anytime you actually stop to look at BD1 sitting on your back, you're like, oh, that's actually looks really bad. Like,
I've never noticed that. I had one when I got the cross guard, like he was holding it, and then somehow like his left hand, as he's holding it, in like near his waist, like his left hand would like pass through his pelvis behind him, like in this weird, grotesque monster thing. It only happened the one time, but I'm like, oh, that looks weird. My favorite weird animation is I was telling you how much I love the like infinite deflect of the double blade. When there's millions of lasers coming at you so fast and it's trying to animate him deflecting all of them, especially if he's like facing the opposite way, the way he's just holding the double blade and going it's just it looks ridiculous. Like this that's probably why they don't give that to any of the other ones, because the animation just can't keep up with what he's trying to do, because it doesn't look good on the double blade. Yeah, I feel like I just want to say more, but I think we should wrap it up. I just want to. This is one of my favorite Star Wars things. Period. Right now, maybe I'll change my mind after I finish it and move on to other stuff. But I just everything about it is just so. I love, I get to shoot guys. Like I love the characters. I love the world. I love the designs. I love talking to people in the saloon. I love just everything about it is just like I really like this.
See, and for me, it's like a 4 out of 10. If it had shipped in a more playable state, I'd probably say like maybe a 7 or an 8. But right now, as it is, yeah, 4.
Like right now, it's if I didn't like know that this game was like hurting my friends, I would probably give it like a 10 out of 10, even though it's not. There are better games and it has some issues, but just everything about it, from like, oh, let me make my little rooftop garden and let me hang out with BD1, and just the characters and everything. I just really everything in this game is like really doing it for me. Like, oh, I get High Republic stuff and I get to kill stormtroopers and listen to B1s be funny at the same time. Like, yeah. It's got it all.
See, and I think for me, it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like, I think I gave the first game a lot more positive review. Like, I had critiques of that one as well, but I feel like I'm being harsher with this one just because it's, this is round 2 for them, and like I said, I don't think that they've really polish. Yeah, I expect more polish, but I think at the end of the day, they didn't really address many of my complaints I had about the first game. And then we just get these like absolutely horrendous performance issues on top of everything else.
I genuinely love this game. We'll see how I feel once I 100% it. I'll tell you what, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'm going to go crazy trying to 100% this, because this game is harder than the first game, because this game is way more platformy than the first game. It might not feel like it at first, but because Cal currently has all the abilities he had in the last game, they still have to up it a notch by giving him new abilities. He does get a number of, I can think of at least 3 new abilities he gets by the end of the story related to traversal. You might have noticed some like weather balloon looking things in the world that you can't do anything with. There's a grappling hook upgrade, and then a couple other things that I won't mention. Not really big spoilers, but just different abilities. And so that's just compounding the ways you can get around the world. So all of the platforming puzzles are now a little bit more complex because they've layered in 3 new abilities. So there's more platforming. And there around the world, on different planets, you find these forced tears, which is new to this game, which is basically just little single challenges. It's not a puzzle room. Some of them are combat. I just found one that made me fight 2 Rancors at once. Like, you go to like the little like nowhere space in like the training room, and some of them are platforming challenges, and every single one I've done so far has driven me crazy.
And I suppose those don't get easier on an easier difficulty either.
Right, because it's platforming, and it's all about being absolutely perfect with timing and, precision jumping and, double jumping and all this stuff. and every single one has just been so, there's like, oh, there's blinking laser gates coming at you. You got to zigzag between them as the ground is falling after you step on it, and got to hop between these zip lines and then turn around before this thing runs out of time. And if you miss it up by half a millisecond, you've already missed your window. And every single one of those I've done, I've quit. I'm just like, I can't keep that up.
That sounds tough.
That's too bad because very hard.
I liked collecting everything in the first game,
Right.
So.
It might be the last thing I end up doing. The combat ones I've done, even fighting 2 Rancors, I thought that was really fun. One of them was just fight 150 B1s. And I'm like, this is great, especially with the double blade where you just make it spin in circles around you. And they're not 150 at the same time on screen, but there's a lot of enemies on screen. I think this game fits a lot more enemies on screen than the last game in some sequences, which is really fun. But those things, they're going to drive me crazy. I'm interested to see how you guys do with them, because I don't know about you, Kurt. I tend to think Leo's a bit more tolerable of high difficulty things than I am. Yeah. But I don't. Maybe that only goes for combat. I don't know. Maybe the platforming will drive him as crazy as it's driving me.
I don't know. We'll see, because like I said, there's already been sequences like in game where I've been annoyed at the platforming, where it's like I do the exact same jump like 10 different times, and one out of those 10 times Cal will actually grab the ledge like he's supposed to.
Yeah, that's what it feels like sometimes in those ones where you have to be like super precise. So when it's not a precise mechanic expecting you to be precise, it's like, ugh, I don't know how I'm going to get through those. Check in with me next year. We'll see if I've gotten that. Anyways, we'll be talking more about Fallen Order. You can expect a new...
No, we'll be talking more about Survivor.
Yeah.
Well, there might be some Fallen Order talk in those videos, too.
We'll be talking more about Jedi Survivor. Once we've all finished the story, we'll probably have a story discussion, because a lot of interesting things happen. And yeah, tell us what you think without being spoilery, because I've seen some mostly positive, but some mixed opinions on the game. What's your favorite part? Why is Turgle the best character in the game? Or who's better, Turgle or Scuva Stev, the fisherman?
Oh, does the Claude guy? I forget what that species is called.
Oh yeah,
is he just a background guy, or
he stays in one spot? Yeah, he just sits in town with his boyfriend. The human next to him, they're a couple. You can like find echoes of them going on a date, because they're like, we both hate the same types of people. We should be a couple. Like, okay.
Yeah, I like that when he's like the first one I found is all like, what'd you call me all the way out here for? He's all like, 'cause this is a date. Guess what? You're on it now. And he's just like, all right, I guess.
Tell us what you like, and stay tuned for more, because I'm digging this game, and there'll be some more stuff about it coming up whenever. Stay tuned to see if Kurt ever actually gets to play it.
So, gosh. Someday.
Okay, goodbye. Be sure to clean your fish tank and plant your rooftop flowers like a good Jedi.